under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I would take approval of the regular agenda as presented.
So moved.
There's a motion by Rick, seconded by Bruce. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. The next item is the swearing in of Sergeant Curtis Colbreth. If you would come up front here. We're gonna stand right. So, did you want to come up? Okay. You want him to come up?
Whatever they want.
Sure, come on up, hon.
Come on up and get your picture
Get
taken.
your picture in the
Your dad.
paper and.
Okay, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Curtis Colbreth,
I, Curtis Goldbrook,
on my honor,
on my honor,
will never betray my badge,
will never betray my badge,
my integrity,
my integrity,
my character,
my character,
or the public trust.
or the public trust.
I will always have the courage
I will always have the courage
to hold myself and others
to hold myself and others
accountable for our actions.
accountable for our actions.
I will uphold the United States Constitution,
I will uphold the United States Constitution,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and its laws.
and its laws.
I will uphold the ordinances of the City of New Prague
I will uphold the ordinances of the City of New Prague
and faithfully serve my agency
and faithfully serve my agency
and community to the best of my abilities.
and community to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, good luck.
Congrats. What is it, 9-5? Got any pictures?
One more? Want any more pictures?
Thanks for coming.
Oh, you need to sign it. Okay.
All right, we have the consent agenda in front of us. If there's no additions, corrections, or you want to pull anything, I would take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And Sean seconds it. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, city engineer project updates.
A resident said to me the other day, you are gonna stop that city engineer when he starts putting roundabouts on the, nature trail, right?
Little technical glitch we're working on.
Well, it's pretty easy when you can read it off.
Well, and plus Tim puts in commas. Jim never did. So I had to try and mentally break when a good
So it
place
doesn't
would
go
be
too
to
long?
break.
Yeah.
So,
You want me just to do it?
but,
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I mean, there is one that,
and it seems to change every time. But you don't see on the old skipping at the military, you know, like when they do them like at the air shows and stuff, where they rattle them off like
I believe it.
they just.
Is there a standard?
Yeah.
So you did the same one when you were a deputy, like a sheriff's deputy?
Yeah.
There is.
So that the state,
Yeah, and actually mine's recorded with the Office of the County Recorder, so you can, you could Google my name and you can find my oath that I signed.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And every time there was a new sheriff, we took a new
Yeah, Chris?
Oh, really? Oh,
So I actually did it once for reserve.
Chris, if you're ready, we can go.
Three for sheriffs. There he is.
Chris.
Must be
Maybe
waiting for
isn't.
me. All right, I'll kind of get right into it then. So, sorry I missed the first five minutes there, but the first thing I have on your agenda is the SCH meeting or SCH project update.
Mhm.
I want to say go through all that unless there are any questions on that for any of those projects that are kind of currently in process. The 10th Avenue Northeast Water Main Repair Project. We are looking to do likely a pre-construction meeting this next week. So I was able to get a hold of the contractor and hopefully get that lined up. And that is likely to start in late September. Otherwise, the main item I have on your agenda today is on the HSIP project. So if there are any questions, I'll also go ahead and move on to that project.
Go ahead.
Okay. So at the last council meeting we had, which was after the bid opening on the 10th Avenue Southeast RRFP project, we found that we had 3 bids that were all exceeding the estimate for the project and did not recommend proceeding until additional funding was secured. Last week, an email from District 7 State Engineer Lisa Bigham. It was noted that an additional amount of money was found to allow the city to proceed with the contract with New Look Contracting Incorporated, and that 90% of their bid would be covered by the HSIP grant program. So of the $115,000, $115,862,000, sorry, $115,862, 90% of that would be covered by grant. So it'd just be the remaining 10% that would be need to be funded by the city, which can come from state aid. And I do have with you today a resolution to pass. One item I do have on here is the contingency upon approval of additional funding toward the program as approved by MnDOT. So as of right now, we just have an email from the state aid engineer saying that, yes, we have the money, but I think we do want to look for an official letter from them saying, here's your new award amount. So that's the only contingency I do have in that resolution that I think would be important to include in that. And hopefully we can get that resolved relatively quickly. So I don't know if there are any questions on that project or on that resolution for me.
Yeah, do you want that action? Do you want the, to say, contingent upon, securement of financing or?
Uh-oh.
It is
I
actually
would.
in the
That's
resolution.
What's that?
Yeah.
In the provided resolution, that contingency is already in there.
Oh, it is?
Number 3.
Number 3.
Oh, yeah, it is in there. Yep.
Make a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion for resolution 23090501, 10th Avenue, Southeast, RRFB accepting bids.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion made by Rick, seconded by Bruce. Any other questions or discussions? Would completion be done this year? We hope.
Yeah. By contract, they have to have the surfacing improvement done by, I believe it is October 20th.
Okay.
And then they would have a little bit more time afterward to install the RRFB unit. So understanding that's going to take perhaps a little bit longer to get that unit installed. I might just have a crosswalk sign for a short amount of time until the full RFB unit is installed.
Okay.
It's not gonna close the road down at all, is it?
No, we have lane shifts, so they had to work on one side of the road at a time. So they'll work on the west side, do the curb improvements, pave it. The city's actually doing the paving, but and then switch over to the east side. So those alternate between the west and east sides when they do the work.
Thank you.
Okay. Any
Thanks,
other
Chris.
questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Anything else, Chris?
I guess nothing for my part. Next meeting, I do plan to be there, and we'll be starting to look at assessments for the 2023 project. So that'll wait for 2 more weeks.
Okay.
All
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, the public is invited to be heard on matters not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. Is there anybody here in the audience that wants to speak to the council? Going once, going twice, gone. Okay, next item is the public hearing, granting a cable television franchise to Comcast Arkansas, Louisiana, Minnesota, Mississippi, and Tennessee LLC. With that, I will open the public hearing. And does somebody want to talk to this?
Oh, yeah, I can. One of the things that city council wanted me to look at when I started was getting franchise agreements updated. If you remember right, last year about this time, we finished off on CenterPoint Energy and got into a 20-year agreement with them. And we have wrapped up an agreement with Comcast for a 10-year agreement going forward. Basically, I guess some of the more notable things in there, language requires that they continue to underground their infrastructure, similar to how our utilities have been to keep things out of the air. Language requires removal of infrastructure that isn't being used. That way it's not just sitting in the ground. And we made sure to keep language in there that allowed for access to at least one public access channel. We don't currently use it, but they will provide one should we want to. If we do decide to go back to using a public access channel and need to purchase equipment to upgrade to make that possible, they would contribute towards that equipment as well. So other than that, it's pretty boilerplate. Haven't done a whole lot of franchise agreements, and so I did work with Bob Vo from Kennedy and Graven on this, and he kind of helped cue me into kind of what's happening around the industry and things we should look out for, and he has been an invaluable asset. So I guess after this, when we get into the first reading of it, I would recommend approval of the franchise agreement.
Okay, any questions of the council?
Are the fees similar to like BevCom then?
Yes.
Is fees the same?
Yep.
And do we have the same arrangement with BevCom as far as their free public access that we don't use?
I believe we do. I would have to check that exact agreement. I know our previous Xfinity agreement had that access channel. Because I wasn't here, we opted to stop using that and take all of our stuff online here in a couple years ago. So.
Equipment's too old, it's all house and school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Equipment became obsolete, and then we made the choice, Mike and I made the choice to just not see what happened if it went away. Nobody said.
When you say the equipment, is that owned by BevCom or by, oh, it is owned by BevCom, okay. All right,
When you were doing that, were you broadcasting both on BevCom and Comcast?
Yes,
So it was a feed to both?
yes, I believe the BevCom one, no. The BevCom one stopped working first. Then the other one, and then we just stopped doing it because it wasn't getting updated and there wasn't really any content being created beyond council meetings. And it just was becoming a real hassle to keep alive. And so we kind of came to the agreement, well, let's see what happens if there's no more content. And as far as I know, nobody said anything. I mean, unless somebody says something to Mike and he gave them a different answer, but.
So I mean, I guess at this point, our stuff is all still accessible just online instead of via your classic cable channel, and we're able to use the equipment we have in here already for our own use instead of having to purchase separate equipment. Like I said, if for some reason we decide to go back, it is in this agreement that Comcast will help purchase the equipment so we can do that.
okay. Any other questions? All right, I would take a motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. All right, so the public hearing's closed. We're gonna go down to item number 9.
So, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Nope, you're fine. I actually was gonna try to cut in before you started talking right at that point. I do wanna say our ordinance numbers have gotten a little mixed up. So it says in the agenda ordinance 339.
Yep,
The Comcast agreement is actually ordinance 340. And then the one following is 341. And the public use cannabis that is for adoption would be 339.
Okay, hang on here. So where's 341 at? Under,
Part B. 9B is 341.
Screening requirement.
oh. It just says section 707.
Yes,
Okay, but that's supposed to be 341?
yes.
Oh. Okay. All right, and then 339, okay. All right, so with that, going into the ordinances for introduction, I would take a motion of the first reading of ordinance number 340, granting a cable television franchise to Comcast of Arkansas, Louisiana, Minnesota, Mississippi, and Tennessee LLC. Does anybody want to make that a motion for first reading?
So moved.
Sean made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Rick made the second. Any other discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, the next item is the introduction of ordinance amending section 341, or should that be ordinance 341?
Ordinance 341.
Ordinance 341, amending
Amending,
section
okay.
707.
Introduction of ordinance 341, amending section 707 of the zoning ordinance titled Screening Relating to Screening Requirements in I-1 Light Industrial Zoning District. So, I'll make a motion to introduce that as the first reading.
Second.
And Bruce made a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. All right, ordinances for adoption. I'll move to adopt of ordinance creating new chapter. I'll move the adoption of ordinance 339, creating new chapter 132 to city code relating to public use of cannabis and hemp products and smoking of any substance on public property. Is there a second?
I have a question.
Yes,
Okay.
so do I.
I missed
Okay.
the first one. When did we decide that, and it's my fault because I was not at the first meeting of the first reading, but when was the change made for tobacco? We were talking about cannabis and then all of
Yep.
a sudden now I saw going through the notes after the meeting that I missed that it was all of a sudden tobacco was added.
Yes, so the reason why tobacco got put into that general discussion is we as staff, you guys had kind of said you wanted to see the options and what stuff would look like back in August when we first brought this up. And so we actually had 3 or 4 different ordinances drafted so we could look at all of them. And we started we kind of thought presenting 4 different ordinances would get wonky because inevitably you guys would look at the 4 and say, well, we want some of this one and some of this one and some of this one. So what we then did is we kind of put everything into one and just brought it forward and then started Xing stuff out at the meeting. The reason why smoking was in there was it got discussed at that first August meeting. Well, how do we have smoking? Like, how can we allow smoking of cannabis in a park or allow smoking of cigarettes, but not cannabis and that sort of thing? And so that's where it got thrown into the discussion just so we could talk about it. And it got whittled down to, I guess, the red line version that you see now.
Does that include, tobacco lists or,
It does not. So it only includes the smoking of tobacco, and only in will be public parks or at facilities. It doesn't include streets and sidewalks, that sort of trails, that sort of thing.
and the golf course?
Yes, the golf course, it also is allowed at the golf course. So you can smoke tobacco under this ordinance at the golf
At the
course.
golf course, okay, I just want, okay.
Now, it's not going to cut tobacco off the sidewalks and streets, is that correct?
Correct. Correct.
Because if that's the case, I can vote for it and I don't have to argue about this. Because I'm not quite sure how that got adopted into it when I said exactly that was what was gonna happen. And you did it, so. If you can smoke tobacco on the streets, and sidewalks, I'll go with this.
Okay, which you can.
which you can with this
Yes.
ordinance, correct?
Okay, so those questions answered. Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, there's a motion by me, seconded by Rick. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, we're down to resolutions. Amending and restating the resolution establishing the New Prague Golf Board. And I was a little confused why that, so if you would explain why
Yeah,
the way
so-
it came to view.
Yep, so when I first started, I think it was the very first golf board meeting I attended, there were a couple questions about what sort of powers they had and what they couldn't do. And so I kind of put it on my own to-do list, similar to how we kind of restructured the EDA to update the rules. Let's take a look, both the golf board and the, also working with Chief Rinda to kind of look at the fire stuff too, and just kind of get everything updated so we all kind of know what's going on. Anyway, so the golf board was one that I kind of tackled next after the EDA. What you see is kind of the first draft of what was worked on. We've talked about it at the golf board for a couple months now. Ultimately knowing that the city council does have the ultimate authority on the power that is given to the golf board, but wanting to make sure that they knew what was coming forward in terms of what their powers are. So this is ultimately what we settled on. Some of the, I guess, highlights, the red line version that we've been working on is actually in the packet there. Some of them are similar to, one of the things that I've heard from golf board members is their thought on having non-residents on the board, similar to the EDA, knowing that there are members that do provide quite a bit for the golf course. The language I guess I proposed was very similar to how we did the EDA, in that no more than 2 non-residents would be able to serve on that board at any time. Like the EDA, the city council does have the ultimate discretion of being able to remove board members and choosing board members. And so if they felt that any of those members, for whatever reason, weren't holding the golf club and the city in its best interest, they could opt to go a different direction on those. And then some of the other ones just kind of get down into kind of some of your basic putting together a future plan for the golf course, doing an annual report to the city, kind of the conditions and what's going on, kind of what their powers are as a golf board and how it relates to, like I said, future planning, contracts, that sort of thing. Just kind of outlining that they can't issue debt or buy or sell property without council approval, that sort of thing. So, I mean, your big ones in here are probably letting them know that they need to start doing an annual report to the city. They need to start kind of putting together a future plan for themselves, and then kind of what the makeup of their board is. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for,
Yeah, I have a few
Josh.
questions
Yeah.
on it, and, the red line version here, is this, from someplace else? Because I don't think this is the actual.
No,
typing
so the
of
red line version is what we started with and kind of what has been added in.
It doesn't match up with the previous resolution, so.
No, I mean, yeah, so yeah, I mean, the red line version is more of kind of what we started with, and I kind of used our EDA one as a template.
Okay, so that makes more sense.
and
It's not the same
Yeah.
document. So we're not redlining, we're not really.
I was more
we're creating a
redlining-
brand new one
It,
then.
it was more redlining myself, as well as the comments are kind of making notes for questions
Okay.
that the golf board had about certain items.
So that's why I didn't have time to kind of go back and forth and see what we're actually changing. And there seems like maybe we're changing more than it seems just by looking at the red line.
We are, I wouldn't say, I mean, I guess you could say we're changing.
maybe clarify?
The original didn't have a whole lot of detail in it, and so we're adding detail that wasn't there, to hopefully eliminate future confusion as to what they shouldn't, can't, should, shouldn't do.
the section 2.5, when you talk about removal for cause, your red line comment, not sure I understand that.
So
comment.
that came because the question from the golf board came, well, golf board would need to approve any removal before the city council did. And I said, my comment was, well, the city council ultimately has the say on whether they can remove some or not. If the golf board would like to make a recommendation on removing one of its own members, it certainly can. The city council would not need to wait on that recommendation. Does that make sense?
I understand.
I think I get what you're coming at. City council doesn't have to go through the golf board basically to remove someone.
Correct.
Well, and it could be as easy, and not saying anything criminal, but it could be a member moves outside of the city boundaries, and that becomes a third
Yeah, I mean.
outside.
It could be
or
something like
whatever.
that, or it could be something of one member seems to be trying to make backdoor contract deals for vendors and whatnot over and over and over again. Yeah, I mean, it could really be anything.
Could be anything.
So I guess, yeah, I mean, if you guys want to take some time to kind of review this, we can, there's no rush on getting this approved tonight. Bring it to city council was the next logical step, I guess.
If you wouldn't mind, because
Yeah.
But just some general questions, the transfer of fund, because this is coming from an EDA document, it talks about that the money has to be used for or bond indebtedness. I don't think that's a requirement. We have to say that in section 4.5, transfer of funds.
Did I miss one?
Well, no, that's, if you're using an EDA document to start with, that makes sense, because EDA has the ability to levy, and therefore it's gotta be, if you take money from it should be applied, and that's right from state statute. But
Oh, yep.
the golf course, we don't have that state statute requirement or any of that kind of thing, so the money could go to the
Correct.
general fund for that matter.
Correct. And
Doesn't have
yes,
to-
yeah, so that language came out of the EDA language, and quite frankly, yeah, we could rework that, because we
Just
would,
rework it and not,
we would just, yeah, rework
not
it.
limit it to
Yep.
something.
I can do that if that's something that, if for some reason the council decides to transfer money away, it doesn't have to be limited in how it's spent.
The next section, talking about acquisition of property,
Which section is it? Sale, I get sale.
I was saying section 5, but I'm not
Okay.
sure if that was the one about sales.
No, sale of property is in 7.
Okay. Then section 5,
Oh, there it is. Yep, 5.2.
I guess this does say, no property can be leased, purchased, or gift without prior approval of the city council. There's another section, or the next one says improvement contracts. Enter contracts for improvements for less than 50,000 without within the budget approval.
The idea being
Seem
with,
to be
yeah, the idea with 5.4 and improvement contracts, if they want to do some major improvements to the golf course, it would need to come back to the city council for ultimate approval before the contract gets signed. If it's a smaller thing, I'm not, and 50,000 was kind of an arbitrary number because I don't know a ton, and golf board seemed to think it was a good number. I don't know what reconstructing a tee box would cost, but if they enter into a contract to reconstruct the tee box, that wouldn't necessarily have to come back to the city council being a lower priced item.
Yeah, I think I have a little difficulty with that. If I read it correctly, if you have, like this last budget, I think they had $10,000 for, it's kind of a
Special projects.
fudgy number for stuff, what might come up or whatever it was. And if they spent that's fine. But if you're making cash and you're generating cash, just because you have the cash, I don't know that I'd want them to be able to spend the $50,000 if it wasn't in the budget.
And so I mean, we could rework the language so that if it's been budgeted and maybe in the long-term financial or long-term planning document that's mentioned in here, so that city council's aware that this project is coming.
Well, I'm comfortable if it's in the budget, like if you have, okay, we're gonna repair, you can make it even generic, tee boxes, and we're gonna assign $50,000, whatever the number is. I think that's okay, but if it just so happens we're making more money this year, well, we're gonna spend $45,000 on this because we have that. And that was the recipe for problems that we had years ago, where we started spending money. We had improvements every year because we're making money, but it didn't last, and when it went backwards, fast. And that's why I think we wanna try to maintain a kind of a discipline to it that, because the goal in my mind is still that we're trying to get them to build up cash so they can have a line of credit for themselves, and we can wean ourselves away from it. But this kind of a thing, if we word it like this, the way I read it, would be a problem.
No, and that makes sense. And I mean, I think we are on the same page intent-wise. My intent was they wouldn't have to come to you guys for every single little thing they wanted
Right.
to do.
I understand.
That's how I read it.
And, but you make a good point that, generally by budgeting for it, they're also informing us that they do plan on having this cash on hand. It's not just, hey, we suddenly came across.
I know when I sat on the golf board years and years ago, we always had it budgeted, you know, we're gonna redo tee box.
Yep.
Blah, 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 you know, I mean, it was always budgeted.
Yeah, I guess we run into the situation too, though, is that if we budget $50,000 or 50 for this, and they have a bad year, and you already know you have a bad year in July or August, should we really be spending that money? And where's the financial discipline that you can enforce? I guess that would be.
And I mean, I guess
giving that control to them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess that may come with the territory of basically entrusting a golf board. You know, that they're basically being entrusted with a certain amount of cash. And what is that limit to which you want them to come back and get okays for everything? Because, I mean, that does slow things down per se. Or by being on the golf board, are they entrusted to make some of those financial decisions of when they may or may not be having a good year?
Yeah, I don't know how you could maybe insert verbiage that if the budget's in the, you know, if you're overall making budget as a second requirement or something.
And some of that may come back on me as well, of just making, like, kind of keeping track of their budget numbers, and reporting back to you guys and or stepping in and speaking to them about what's going on. I mean, I generally review their budget numbers as they come across every month. I don't attend every meeting, but I'm certainly reviewing their numbers as they come across.
Well, couldn't we just solve it by changing that 50,000 to, let's say, 10?
I mean, we could, yeah, I mean, we could change, like I said, when I put 50 in there, it was an arbitrary number.
Right.
And we can certainly change that number too.
Well, 10 isn't gonna sway, even if they were having a bad year, it's not gonna break the city, you know, but they should have some type of number, and I'm not saying it's 50, but in order to
Be able to operate.
spend, yeah, within the budget, and that's kinda how I read it. But Bruce brought up a good point. Now the more I think about it, maybe the 50,000 is a little much, just in case, you know.
There's a couple other things with that. We would still have to approve the contract. They're not a legal entity that they can approve a contract. I think the city council is only the entity that can approve contracts.
And I guess I'm thinking, for example, if they brought in somebody to redo a small section of the cart path, I don't know if that's something that's ever come to the city council in the past. I believe that's being handled over at the golf board.
I don't know, but I think you should check that, because we had that issue 4 or 5 years ago where they entered into a long-term lease on golf carts, and technically that was supposed to be the contract itself should have been approved by the city.
Because it was over a major dollar amount, wasn't it?
Well, there wasn't a dollar amount involved. It was, the fact is that only the city council can authorize execution of contracts or leases, financial obligations.
I can certainly check into that.
So I think if there's leeway, I'm certainly open to doing it, but I don't know that was one of the issues that came up. Now in that particular case, that was a little bit of a surprise, because that wasn't in the budget, and they thought just because it was a lease, the annual payment was below it, but the commitment was a longer term commitment.
Shouldn't have all that been in the budget?
In that case, I think they decided, and oftentimes you run into that annual decision, it's cheaper to lease than buy and all that kind of thing. But, I'm just concerned that we have the comfortable guardrails on things, and that we have kind of a cumbersome, not a cumbersome, but a different relationship where we have a contractual manager that's oversaw by a city administrator, but yet we're giving authority to a board. But it's still, the authority comes through a city administrator.
See, and I guess I don't know if I read the contract for the manager the same way. I guess the way I've read and tried to interpret that contract is he basically reports to the golf board. And
Okay, I don't.
yeah,
have it
yeah. So
memorized
I guess
either,
the way I've interpreted that is his only direct report is the golf board, which does make for an awkward relationship because in theory, I can ask him for stuff or sit down and meet. And I mean, Kurt's been great to work with, but he could say no. That basically he reports to the board. But at the same time, the employees that by his contract that he supervises, I also supervise at the same time. It does create for a weird relationship with that contract.
I think that the golf board could have a resolution stating that ultimately this contract is controlled by the city administrator.
Correct, yes, they would have that ability. And
if-
that needs to be worked.
And I think they understand that, but
Yep.
maybe that should be written down somewhere.
I mean, maybe
know.
that should go into the contract.
I agree.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I would recommend that.
For next time.
Okay.
And yeah, I'd cut this down from 50 to 10.
Well, you can buy $10,000 worth of potted plants and flowers to dress it up real quick.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, I mean, yeah, 10 is, I think, the number, but,
See, none of the other committees have a free pass to do that kind of stuff without coming to us first. And I don't know.
And I would guess most of their stuff would just come through consent agenda. It would basically be the
There you go, right there.
consent agenda line item as stuff rolls through.
The other thing I never really got answered before, and I thought we are gonna have the attorney delve into that whenever we did this update, was if they have the ability to approve payments. That was an open question when we talked about this like 5 years ago. I forget why it came up, but maybe it was the discussion on contracts and financial obligations and things like that. Because they seem to be approving payments, but then they're kind of in our minutes sometimes too.
They certainly do approve payments. I mean, it's part of their meeting every month is to approve the.
So under what authority in this document do they have that ability?
Yeah, because the utilities would have to have something like that too, I would imagine.
And the EDA, huh?
Well, the EDA is a legal entity by
yeah.
itself, and utility is a legal entity. This is not. This is part of the city of New Prague,
Oh,
and that's
even
why
as an enterprise fund?
enterprise. Yeah.
Okay.
When they borrow money, they borrow it under the city of New Prague. They don't
Okay.
have the golf
Yep.
course or.
Gotcha.
And
And,
actually,
and, and I do wonder, because their name is on the checks that we write. And I remember asking why, and someone told me it's because they make payments.
we
so-
make the payments.
Well,
don't we?
yeah.
Well, for example,
But if you look at every check that we write, it says City of New Prague Utility Commission, New Prague Golf Club at the top
Yep.
as the three entities on that check.
And whoever the signing authority signs those.
And so I can check into it, but I wonder if those are there. That way, the New Prague Golf president has the authority to sign the check.
Along
Is it
with,
utilities?
well,
yes.
utilities. So there's one, they used to have separate checking accounts.
We have one checking account.
But
It
now
all
it's
comes out of
just
that one checking account.
and it hits the city of New Prague Municipal Utilities and
New Prague
New
Golf
Prague
Club.
Golf Course.
did the auditors ever bring this up?
How do you get to?
They've never brought it up to me.
No, I'm surprised that they haven't.
Suppose
because-
they,
And that makes me wonder if that's why they're on the check.
No, I
because
mean,
at
how
some
can you
point this
mix
discussion was had.
Those that's not an enterprise fund.
I don't know.
That seems odd to me, but.
Okay. Well, maybe there's more stuff we gotta check into.
I'm surprised the auditors have never brought that up.
Yeah, obviously it must be, I guess that's a question for,
Is it just one signature on it, or does it require two?
no.
Requires two.
And
So-
who's-
so
Oh, it does,
yeah.
okay.
So who's the second signature on the golf course?
I am.
You are. along with the golf course president, and who's the second signature with
I believe it is Bruce, the general manager.
Bruce and Paul? Well, it was Paul Bush. I don't know if Paul's still was Paul the president?
Oh, treasury.
Dan Bishop.
Dan Bishop, I mean, I'm sorry. So it's those signatures, yeah.
In the golf board?
Golf board would be my, president and myself.
So in this document, does it give them the authority to,
Off the top of my head, I don't believe so, but I would have to breeze through it again quickly.
So when, I thought all those invoices, so like, let's say Kurt buys golf balls and
Yep.
hats and tees and whatever else, and that invoice comes from FootJoy or
Yep.
whomever. Doesn't that invoice get sent over? He verifies that we received everything
Correct.
and then sends it over to,
He then sends the invoice to us because, finance office downstairs, similar to city council, will put together a list of all the golf invoices that came through and send those to the golf board to approve payment of. After the golf board approves payment, they then land on my desk for final signature.
okay.
yeah, I don't know that technical issues with approving claims for payment. They're actually not paid until we approve them technically.
Yep.
And that's a state statute type of thing. So I don't know if we can delegate our authority to approve payments to a advisory kind of committee.
And I'll have to look at that because you guys never see the golf board one. It would add to our stack of checks if you guys.
But sometimes they're in the minutes or in the agenda.
Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. But
Yeah. But if you could clarify that,
Yep,
and we
I
can
will
get a
look into those.
definitive at this time, because I asked the question, why aren't they included in ours one time, and I thought we were gonna get an answer to that, but.
Okay, yep, I will dig on that. Any other changes or questions, I guess, for this right now?
Okay. Well, I think,
I do, the point you bring up about, city administrator's authority, I think it has to be clear that that's in there somehow.
Yep, I mean, and that to me feels more like in the contract authority than in the regulations itself, because in the regulations, as I tried to write them, would allow for a contract employee, basically, but if there weren't, then that person would just be a city employee under my normal authority. And so
Okay.
that's something I think that we need to work into the contract for 24, and going forward is that authority structure.
okay, then I have a question.
Because that contract is not only approved by the board, it's also approved by you guys.
Yep. But what about, let's say if this doesn't work out and we decide to move to a city employee, and then in 5 years, we decide to move back to an outside contractor.
Yep.
This resolution won't give you that authority, or the city council the authority to,
This resolution gives the city council no authority. This resolution gives the various authorities and lays out the powers of the golf board. The city council has the ability to,
but maybe that should be listed in there, who gets the authority to decide that, the final? If I'm not making too much hamburger out of it, I'm just throwing it out.
yep, I guess when I think about that, I mean, the city council has the ultimate authority to hire and fire anyone within the city at this point.
Or maybe we can put a catch-all line on the bottom.
I mean, I think it might be easier basically to state the city, or that the golf board does not have authority to hire and fire personnel, that power rests within the city itself. Like I said, putting too much in, like, I hate to put stuff in here
I
that
understand
basically
that.
creates redundancy, and then if something changes somewhere, then you gotta run somewhere else and
No,
change another line.
I understand, but I just don't wanna, but you just brought up the good, that they don't have the authority, because you could have a golf course employee go out and tell the city employee that they're fired, and then open a whole can of worms. Because,
Yeah,
I mean, but, just a thought.
okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to the city administrator evaluation.
This was your item.
Yeah, so I gotta find it though. I just submitted a memo just saying that he had a, what did I say in here? We talked about, generally exceeds.
Mediocrely
meets and-
satisfactory.
Meets and exceeds, and based on this, I'm gonna make a recommendation that we move salary of Josh from step 3 to step 4 on grade 19. I just did the memo, so it was more of a paper trail than anything, but you can do what you want with
So
it.
you just made the motion, then you need a second?
No, I didn't make the motion, but I could.
Okay,
I'll make the motion to give Josh, based on a satisfactory evaluation, step increase from step 3 to step 4 on grade 19 on the city pay matrix.
I'll second.
Okay, there's been a motion, a second. Any other discussion?
I think we had the discussion, about all the different issues, and I thought they fared very well, and so I would support the motion.
Okay. All right, otherwise, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, I'll go around the horn before we go to a closed meeting. Rick,
Nothing.
Bruce,
Nothing.
I don't have anything.
I do not, nope.
Josh? Ken?
Nope.
Chief?
Just one quick update. We did have one officer resignation letter that was submitted late last week, so our process is still currently open for the, from the last time around, so we currently have no applications for that either spot right now, so,
So there's 2 jobs open?
correct.
You looking?
No.
Did
Not
you-
that.
Are they on the league site?
They are, yeah.
Believe so.
Yep, they advertise in the league, the paper, and then in the Minnesota Post Board.
Do you put it on Minnesota counties by chance? I'm just.
There's, the issue right now is there's over 200 jobs
I
in
know,
Minnesota.
I
so
know. It's just,
It is what it is at this point. We could advertise every day, and I don't think that it would, we're just gonna have to find that right person, so.
I just didn't notice it when I was on there today, that's all.
okay. Is that it, Tim?
Yes, that's all I have.
Okay. Matt? Nothing? Okay.
It's a long wait to say nothing.
Did the, building close?
Yes, we closed on the, Parks building here last Thursday.
I think you said that in your memo.
Yep.
Cool.
And I believe Matt's already moved in and,
What are you waiting for?
In the old days, I'd be moved in already today because stuff, I remember one time I bought a lawnmower, the council approved it one night. I got told to order it in the morning, and in the afternoon I got told to cancel the order, so. So, okay, I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
I heard Sean. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, and then we're gonna have a closed session coming up. Thank you.